Hello. I'm sorry that neither myself nor the Cabinet Secretary for Rural Affairs, Land Reform and Islands are able to join you this morning. But I should like to start by acknowledging the contribution that Scottish Land and Estates and all of you as members make to Scotland. I know this conference will showcase how our land delivers for Scotland, for people, jobs and nature. Farming, crofting, land management and other rural businesses are central in maintaining thriving rural and island communities where people want to live and work. We're committed to continuing to work in partnership with Scotland's rural businesses and communities. Last month, the First Minister set out to Parliament the Scottish Government's three driving missions: equality, opportunity and community. These will determine the priorities of this government. The First Minister was clear that these missions are vital to everyone, no matter whether they live in rural, island or urban Scotland. He emphasised that we will be taking a tailored approach, fully reflecting regional circumstances and working closely with our partners in rural and island areas. Now, I appreciate that some of us may have different thoughts on the future of Scotland, but I believe independence provides the opportunity to use a full range of powers to pursue priorities that are tailored to Scotland's needs. Independence will allow us the chance to replicate the success of many neighbouring countries which are more prosperous, productive and fairer than the UK. Last year, the Scottish Government started to set out a comprehensive prospectus for independence through our Building a New Scotland series of papers. 3 papers have been published to date and they explain some of the ways in which the full powers of independence could help support development of the rural economy, and that through a more open and welcoming immigration system, encouraging and supporting people to settle in Scotland for the long term, whilst helping to address the needs of areas at risk of depopulation. Secondly, a fairer labour market, including a fair national minimum wage, set at a level that better reflects the cost of living and with a single rate for all age groups, removing, for example, the current age discrimination for young workers. And the introduction of a Building a New Scotland fund, which would support a more rapid transition to net zero and help to build resilient and sustainable places through, for example, building affordable rural housing. Of course, this government will continue to set out its case for independence and for Scotland's right to choose our own future. As we look to the future, our land and our seas are precious assets that sustain our people and underpin our food security. Our key priority is to ensure that we continue to strengthen our custodianship to protect and enhance these assets for ourselves and for future generations. Within the First Minister's statement, the Scottish Government committed to introduce land reform legislation. This legislation will build on the firm foundations that we already have, following good practice and taking land rights and responsibilities seriously. The legislation will ensure that the good stewardship and leadership in land ownership demonstrated by many of you becomes universal. We want the legislation to further improve transparency of land ownership, to strengthen the contribution that large-scale landholdings make to the public interest, and to empower our communities by providing more opportunities to own land and have a say in how land in their area is used. Now, I'm sorry that I've not been able to be part of discussions on Scotland's land reform journey with you today, but Scotland has a proud history of land reform since the early days of devolution, and we're very grateful for your ongoing contribution to its development. The proposals in the next land reform bill will continue that journey. As you will know, we consulted last year on proposals for our next bill, and we received well over 500 responses to the consultation, which we published in December. I want to thank you for waiting patiently on the fuller analysis of those responses. We hope to publish this very soon. But before I touch on some of the issues raised in the consultation response, I want to be clear that we consider such consultations to be an essential part of policy development. It's absolutely critical that we hear from the full spectrum of those who have an involvement and interest in the work, as I did last summer with the series of public discussions that I led across the country on the topic. This engagement and discussion will not end just because we have finished the formal consultation. As we prepare the bill for introduction to Parliament, we will continue to work closely with partners in rural and island areas to ensure that we take a tailored and proportionate approach. Now, while there was support for many of the measures, responses also highlighted some concerns. The formal submission from Scottish Lands and Estates, and I expect from others here too, included some of those concerns. As our development of the bill progresses, my colleague Ms Goujon will continue to work closely with stakeholders, including of course Scottish Lands and Estates, to make sure that we introduce a bill that's ambitious, balanced and robust, achieving our policy aims in a way that's proportionate and that is fully in line with human rights legislation. Turning to the specific proposals in the bill, I want to first acknowledge that many landowners are currently setting very high standards indeed. They are taking their responsibilities to the economy, the environment and our journey to net zero very seriously. Many inspirational stories are being showcased at this conference, highlighting success and best practice across a wide range of topics, such as working with communities, increasing rural housing provision, and addressing the climate and nature emergencies. But we believe that we can go further. The 2016 Land Reform Act brought in our Land Rights and Responsibilities Statement. Although voluntary, it has been embraced by many landholders. The statement reflects the Scottish Government's aspirations for community empowerment and land use and management in support of the Government's targets for both net zero and biodiversity. The proposals in the new bill would put the statement on a statutory footing for large-scale landowners to ensure that the best practice of many becomes universal. Many landholders proactively publish plans and strategy documents and actively engage with local communities in decision-making. The proposed requirement for land management plans in the bill is intended to bring all of that up to the standards of best practice. These plans will provide a basis for engagement with local communities over land use decisions that affect them. They will also be an opportunity for landholders to secure recognition of good practice. We recognise that the proposals for the introduction of a public interest test when ownership of large-scale landholdings are transferred and the requirement for prior notification of intention to sell, that these have led to much debate. We welcome this debate and we will continue to engage with you on the development of all of our proposals. The prior notification proposals in the bill, they would seek to build on and to complement the existing community right to buy framework. It would give community bodies advance notice that a landholder intends to sell their land. It's not intended to replace existing legislation in any way. A community group who is particularly keen on a particular piece of land or a building should continue to exercise their statutory rights under Part 2 of the 2003 Land Reform Act. With resources provided by the Scottish Government, the Scottish Land Fund is continuing to support community ownership. Since 2016, the Scottish Land Fund has approved 260 awards of funding for the acquisition of land and land assets, bringing over 19,300 acres into community ownership. Over 940,000 people across Scotland now live in communities where assets have been acquired over the last 5 years with funding from the Scottish Land Fund. All these proposals would apply only to large-scale landholdings. We proposed a 3,000 hectare threshold in the consultation. We recognise that scale has some advantages when seeking to deliver landscape-level environmental improvement. But scale brings risks of undue local concentration of power, and the government has always been clear that with rights come responsibilities. Our land reform objectives for greater diversity of ownership are not incompatible with our net zero and environment ambitions. All landowners, be them public, private, community and charitable, they are capable of working together at a landscape scale in order to realise net zero ambitions, irrespective of the scale of individual holdings. The Scottish Government and the people of Scotland, they expect and indeed they need landowners to be good custodians of their properties and to engage with the local community on how their land is managed and used. As this conference demonstrates, there is much good practice that we are seeking to build upon with our new bill. In the time I had left, I'd like to just touch on agriculture. Attendees will be well aware of recent global shocks that have and continue to have an impact on global food security. These include EU exit impacts, the COVID-19 pandemic, and the illegal invasion of Ukraine. All are having an impact on global agriculture and upon all aspects of our domestic food and drink supply chain. The Scottish Government made a commitment to provide farmers, crofters and land managers with certainty that their direct payments would continue after EU exit. Our support for the agricultural sector continued in the face of Brexit, the unprecedented pandemic disruption and now the cost crisis. Last year, the then Cabinet Secretary for Rural Affairs and Islands announced Scotland's vision for agriculture, a vision with food production at its heart. It makes clear our support for farmers and crofters in providing the country with healthy, nutritious food, whilst also ensuring Scotland meets its world-leading climate and nature restoration outcomes. The Scottish Government is very clear that there is no contradiction between high-quality food production and producing it in a way that delivers for climate and nature. The new Agriculture Bill will be brought forward as a co-developed framework. It will enable producers to deliver their essential role towards realising our shared ambition as articulated through that vision for agriculture. In another example of collaborative policy development, we were able to work with the sector and with stakeholders on the consultation for the bill. As with the Land Reform Bill, we are giving careful consideration to the diverse range of views received, and we also hope to publish the analysis shortly. I should like to also mention housing. I know Scottish Lands and Estates consistently highlight the housing challenges facing rural Scotland, and that affordable housing is fundamental to the viability of rural communities. I'm acutely aware of these challenges. The Government is committed to delivering on our target of 110,000 affordable homes by 2032, of which at least 70% will be available for social rent and 10% will be in our remote, rural and island communities. We're making £3.5 billion available over this Parliament to support the delivery of social and affordable housing across Scotland. Building on this progress, the Scottish Government is developing a remote, rural and islands housing action plan, and we've announced that £25 million of funding from the Affordable Housing Supply Programme will be made available until 2028 to help make best use of underused or empty properties, and doing that by making them available for key workers and others in need. We've covered rather a lot today, but I should like to close by thanking you for the opportunity to speak with you. I'm very pleased that George Burgess, the Scottish Government's Director for Agriculture and Rural Economy, with whom many of you will be familiar, is able to be with you at the Assembly Rooms and to answer any questions you might have. I know from the recent welcome letters to the new First Minister and the new Cabinet Secretaries that Scottish Land and Estates is committed, alongside you as its members, to work in partnership with us on the key challenges facing rural Scotland. I can assure you that the Cabinet Secretary for Rural Affairs and myself and the Scottish Government as a whole are committed to working together to tackle these challenges collectively. Thank you very much.